In the Bryan Kohberger case, the Idaho 4 case, the state police in Idaho have released a lot of police reports. Some of it's interesting. Some of it leads a lot of questions. And on another topic, some of the parents have sued to keep some of the photographs from being made public. Over 500 pages of the work that the Idaho State Police did in following up on the Idaho 4 tragedy have now been made public. A lot of material, and I know a lot of other people have gone through it. We're going to try and narrow it down to the stuff that I found interesting. If during this episode you feel that there is material that we should put in our next episode, let me know. If you know the report number, that'd be good. If not, just let us know what you want, because I've read most, not all. I've read most of them and watched some other people going over them. So we're going to jump right in and take a look at starting out with this report, which is number 58. It is an interview that was done on December 13th, 2022, 1 month after the occurrence at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho. And what this is, and we are going to say what it is if we know. A lot of times, as you can see, things are redacted. Means they took a black pen, as they would have in the old days, but here they're just hiding it electronically. Means they've hidden stuff for whatever reason. Sometimes it's personally identifiable information. Other times they're trying to protect people. This is an interview over at the Corner Club, the bar where Maddie and Kaylee were on the last night of their lives. And so we're going to take a look here. Rather than reading all the stuff in the header, this is an interview stating that from November 27th through December 1st of 2022, Idaho State Police Detective Sergeant T. Hopkins and I, Idaho State Police Detective D. Brown, met individually with 4 employees of the Corner Club who were working the evening of November 12th into the morning of November 13th. Redacted worked the shift as probably a bartender or something, while someone else all worked different shifts. Redacted stated the night was unremarkable and like most busy weekend nights at the bar. He did not recall any altercations or patrons who caught his interest. So before we read further, you got to understand that here is a poor person that works at a bar. It's, unless you're the owner, you're really not making any money. Are they going to tell the police if something horrible happened? Are they going to tell the police if someone got drunk and started slugging people and was not thrown out? Are they going to reveal that kind of stuff? No, of course not. I digress. B, somebody stated that the night was unremarkable and like most busy weekend nights at the bar, this is a carbon copy of what was said by the other witness, he didn't recall any altercations or patrons who caught his interest. C, the next employee, we'll call him employee C, stated the night was unremarkable and like most busy weekend, cut and paste from the previous one. He did not recall any altercations or patrons who caught his interest. Now we get beyond the cut and paste segment. He knew Madison Mogen and Kaylee Goncalves as regulars at the bar and served them drinks that evening. He said they held normal conversations during the evening. Okay. Employee D stated the night was unremarkable and like most weekend nights at the bar. He believed one unknown man was thrown out of the bar for intoxication, but was unaware of any altercations or patrons who caught his interest. He knew Madison Mogen, Kaylee Goncalves, and X as regulars at the bar and saw them at the bar that night. Now, the reason that's important, this person D, is because there is such a thing as dram shop liability. In other words, in most states, and I'm no expert in the law in Idaho, I am licensed in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. And generally speaking, and this is something that I specialized in law school, generally speaking in the United States, and I know a lot of people don't like this, but generally speaking, the black letter law is if a bar, also known as a dram shop, knowingly serves an intoxicated patron, and that intoxicated patron goes out and causes harm, the bar can be held liable. Now, the touchstone of negligence law is notice. So the person has to manifest outward symptoms of being intoxicated, and we all know what they are. So that's why this is interesting. Person D said he believed one unknown man was thrown out of the bar for intoxication. So the bar, of course, if a person is showing outward signs of intoxication, they have a legal duty to get the person out of there. So in my view, it's interesting, but it's unremarkable so far. 2, the interviews were memorialized with handwritten notes and added to the case file. Now we go number 3 on November 28th of 2022, a couple of weeks after the crime. Detective Sergeant T. Hopkins and I met with X and her roommates, X and X, at the apartments directly, probably next door or of 1122 King Road, related allegations of a stalking earlier in the school year involving X and X, redacted. Ultimately, X, a University of Idaho student at the time, was dismissed from the university and his fraternity. X was arrested by Moscow Police Department officers on unrelated charges in September of 2022. X was unaware of any actual stalking investigation conducted by law enforcement. The Moscow Police Department was familiar with X, and he was believed to have been in the Boise area the weekend of November 12th. It was believed to be. So, I said there are questions here we don't know. Was that followed up on? Do we know? Do we know who the stalker was? Was he thrown out of the school? Like it says on line 4 there, that he was dismissed from the university and his fraternity. Well, who was this stalker? 4, Detective Sergeant T. Hopkins and I passed on the info. And yeah, I'm aware that people have used a name, but do we have that nailed down for certain? Detective Sergeant T. Hopkins and I passed on the information concerning X to FBI Special Agent T. Shirley at the Moscow Police Department. I entered the audio recording of the interview with X into evidence at the Idaho State Police District 4 office in Jerome. Number 5, this is still the police report regarding the Corner Club. Detective T. Barrett and I met with X, who lived in X in Moscow, Idaho. X was the registered owner of some type of a vehicle bearing Idaho license plate redacted. The X car, likely, was parked in front of apartment X. Surveillance video on November 13th retrieved from X captured an SUV-type vehicle resembling of X leaving the parking lot east of X around 4:24 a.m. So here's a car leaving around 4:24 a.m. That fits kind of into law enforcement's timeline. But it's an SUV-type vehicle resembling an X returning to the parking lot around 6:30 a.m. Interesting. We go to 5A. X identified the X as hers, said she worked overnights from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., said she worked the night of November 12th and would have returned home the morning of November 13th between 6:30 and 7 a.m. All right. B. X said it was possible she parked in the lot east of X that morning, but that she usually parked in front of the apartment. She said it was possible she came home during her work shift to check on her cats, but she could not recall. C. Somebody knew 1122 King Road to be a party house. This person recalled seeing 2 men. This is interesting. 5C. This witness, who's redacted, of course, knew 1122 King Road to be a party house. This witness recalled seeing 2 men standing outside the front door about 5:00 p.m. on November 12th, described the man on their phones as if they had been turned away from the house. Interesting. If someone went to 1122 King Road early in the evening on November 12th, the evening prior to the crimes, and they were standing outside on their phones as if they'd been turned away. Interesting. I entered the audio recording of the interview with X into evidence at the Idaho State Police District 4 office in Jerome. Instead of speaking out Idaho State Police, from now on, is it okay if I just say ISP?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Then we go to number 7. On December 5th of 2022, ISP Detective Knudsen and I met with somebody at his parents' residence in Boise, Idaho, related the following. A, he was the designated driver for ex-fraternity members the weekend of November 12th, 2022, the weekend in question. Designated driver duties are assigned on a weekly basis to freshman members. X was the only designated driver for the fraternity that day. B, this person was driving his black make model year vehicle, all redacted. That's okay. Members requested rides from this person via phone call or text messages. X members also communicated with one another over a group chat through the Group Me app. Okay. X was a freshman member of X. He's from Boise and knew of several other members from Boise prior to attending the University of Idaho. E, X drove members and their friends to and from Moscow venues between approximately 1:30 p.m. on November 12th and 2 o'clock a.m. on November 13th. This person estimated to have had at least 50 rides to a variety of frat members and their friends during that time. Now, remember, this is the weekend that everything happened. It was a big weekend in Moscow, Idaho. It was the weekend of the big football game, the last football game in the season. This is a big weekend. Anybody that's ever had anything to do with sports or a university or a college knows that. F, the redacted witness believed so-and-so to be a former member who had been kicked out of the fraternity for prior behaviors unknown to X. X had been told by upperclassmen that X was a low priority when requesting designated driver rides due to his status with the fraternity. So this guy is a bad actor. Who knows why? Maybe he drinks. Maybe he stalks. Maybe he's just obnoxious. But when he called for a designated driver pickup ride, we'll put him on the bottom of the list and go pick up somebody else. X had been told by upperclassmen to watch out for X and X because they are known to be aggressive with the upperclassmen. H, X knew X as the former something of the fraternity. X lived in the fraternity house. X, a bouncer at the corner club, and X lived in the other 2 basement private rooms. X said X stayed in his room 90% of the time. All right. So the eyewitness, believed so-and-so was banned from the corner club for fighting. Sure would be interesting to know more about this, wouldn't it? J, witness, unredacted, had taken X to gas stations on several occasions prior to the weekend of November 12th to buy beer. He always bought Keystone Light, not the top shelf stuff. K, the witness described both X and Y as mysterious people. He said they normally kept to themselves and did not talk with other people much. He said fraternity members liked X, but no one liked Y. Eight, specific to redacted interactions with X and Y that weekend, the witness provided the following information and timeline. A, at approximately 4 p.m. on November 12th, X picked up X and Y from a party, redacted, and took them to Taco Bell and a gas station. The Tesoro off believed and bought Keystone Light beer at the gas station. All right, again, not the top shelf stuff. 8C, 8B, I jump ahead. At approximately 4:30 p.m., this driver dropped X and Y off near somebody's residence in the parking lot east of redacted. C, redacted picked X and Y up near redacted residence and dropped them off at the X house on fraternity house, obviously, on campus. Our witness here at 8C could not recall a time he was requested to pick them up, and the request was not documented in text messages on his phone or call log. He never heard from X again that night. So then we get to D. At approximately 7:30 p.m., our redacted friend here received a text from X to pick him up at probably a frat house. And our 8D redacted witness ignored the text, didn't want anything to do. E. At approximately 9:30 p.m., our witness here, redacted, received another text from X to pick him up. Our witness responded to the request, but he could not remember if he picked up X at his residence or at the frat house. He took him to the corner club, never saw him again that night. So there's a bad actor here who, we don't know if nobody liked him or just there was bad blood between these two individuals, but somebody, it was a shady character, that's all we can really say, was taken over to the corner club. Now, on a college campus, there are groups of people that like each other. There are groups of people that don't like each other. So I don't know. Is it worth following up on? Yes. Is it a big, huge red flag? I don't know. F. At approximately 12:30 a.m. on November 13th, our witness here responded to the group chat on the GroupMe app, replying no to a question concerning flooding in a fraternity house bathroom. G. At approximately 2 a.m., our witness returned to the frat house, went to the freshmen's sleeping porch, and hung out with fellow freshmen and sorority girls for the remainder of the night. H. At approximately 2:10 p.m., now we're all the way to the p.m. If this is not a typo, that now we're jumping 12 hours ahead, posted on the group chat on the GroupMe app, quote, "Have we taken tabs on the fellows," unquote, referring to a head count of fraternity members upon news of the murders at 1122 King Road. So this sentence, H here, jumps 12 hours ahead. 9, I photographed text messages, contacted information, and group chat message strings or text strings on X phone. I entered the audio recording of the interview with X along with the aforementioned photographs into evidence at the ISP District 4 office in Jerome. So that's the end of that police report. Let's see, where are we going to go next? Oh, we have a professor who wouldn't cooperate with the police in this next report, number 59. Again, as I said before, we're not going to cover them all. We're going to cover the ones that I found kind of interesting. This is our midweek brief episode where we usually just do viewer comments, but as of late, we've put a couple of other interesting things into it. So without any further ado, on December 9th, 2022, at about 12:08 p.m., ISP Detective Hugh Powell and I, ISP Detective and FBI Task Force Officer Gideon Roberts, interviewed X regarding his interactions with Kaylee Goncalves. Goncalves had been redacted from January to March 2022. Okay. On December 9th, 2022, at about 12:08 p.m., Idaho State Police Detective Powell and I interviewed X regarding his interactions with Goncalves. Goncalves has been obviously a student from January to March 2022. Detective Powell and I met with Redacted, located at Redacted, Moscow, Idaho. What follows is a summary of the interview. For full details, refer to the audio recording. After advising X of the purpose of the interview and that the interview would be recorded, X provided the following information. Here we go. A, he first met Goncalves in January of 2022 when she was placed, redacted, by University of Idaho as a redacted, which was part of the requirements of her degree. B, Goncalves was initially timid and struggled. This doesn't really gel with some of the other things we've heard about her being very outgoing, very friendly, very popular, and all that. But anyhow, maybe in a new situation, in a professional student teacher professor setting, maybe she was initially timid and struggled to connect with this person, which he attributed to complications of the COVID-19 lockdowns. I don't know. Here we are 2 years after the real COVID, threat. Goncalves C. did redacted titled, she did a paper, she did a study titled do you think this is overly redacted? Yeah, I can see protecting people's personally identifiable information. I can see protecting, witnesses who are just giving certain information. They're not really serious suspects. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. And I guess the state police are being sensitive to not releasing names. But do you think that some of this is just a little bit redacted? Goncalves did redacted titled Fun Festivals of Africa. She did a study. She did a paper. Maybe it was a PowerPoint. I don't know. Could have been something I don't even understand, as I don't a lot of the new apps. Anyhow, during her time in this program, D, the only time he had contact with Goncalves outside of their professional relationship was when he took his 3 daughters and wife to Goncalves' sorority house. So his daughter could sell chocolate bars to the sorority as a fundraising event for an international trip. Okay. The only communications he had with Goncalves was regarding her role as a redacted and was typically via text message. He will periodically take redacted to get coffee after they successfully complete their redacted, but he couldn't remember definitively if he had taken Goncalves to coffee during her time. I don't know about that. From everything that we know about Kaylee Goncalves, if you took her out to coffee, I think you'd remember it. G, he couldn't remember the exact dates, but knew Goncalves was a something from January to March 2022. On the night of November 12th and into the early morning hours of November 13th, he was at home with his family. He was with his 3 daughters at home with his wife, who I guess, that's her, I would guess, redacted, was at a ladies' night from about 6 p.m. until about 10 p.m. He put his children to bed about 9 p.m., and then he went to bed shortly after while we were speaking and placed it on speakerphone. Oh, I read this wrong. When his wife arrived home around 10 p.m., he was already asleep in bed. Redacted called his wife while we were speaking and placed it on speakerphone. She provided the same information as he had previously provided. 2, X was initially agreeable. This is the part that I found interesting. That's why I'm reading this. X was initially agreeable to providing DNA sample, but was hesitant to allow his cell phone to be forensically extracted. He had to leave to redacted, but he agreed to provide the DNA sample later that evening after discussing the matter of the cell phone extraction with his wife. At about 5 p.m., X contacted me by phone and told me he intended to seek legal counsel before providing the DNA sample or allow his cell phone to be forensically extracted. X told me he would contact me on December 12th, 2022, to finalize his decision. On December 12th of 2022, I processed the audio recording of the interview into evidence at the Moscow Police Department and transferred the recording to MPD evidence technician Tim Smallridge. Number 5, on December 13th, now we're exactly 1 month after the crime. At about 5 p.m., I contacted X by phone after he failed to contact me the previous day. He obviously was hoping they'd forget, but good investigators don't forget stuff. X told me he did not believe he had done anything wrong. He had been, quote, a good Samaritan, unquote, by allowing Goncalves to be X, and he didn't understand why he was on the contact list in the first place. Therefore, he was declining to provide a DNA sample or his phone for extraction. Isn't that interesting? Here's a teacher, professor, somebody obviously in an educational capacity over Kaylee Goncalves, had some interaction with her and her studies. And initially they go to talk to him. He's reluctant about giving over his phone. He has to think about it. He has to talk to a lawyer. And he finally calls the police, or the police call him, I should say. And he says no to the DNA or to the phone extraction. So what was on his phone? Was it anything relevant to this case, or was it stuff that he really wouldn't want, his wife finding out about? So that is the end of that report, with the exception of some notes. I would imagine these are the notes that the police kept, because we see here 8 to 9 bedtime, home that night. Wife was going to a girls' night. So yeah, this is just hard to read. So hey, thank you guys for not posting just that and for putting it in typing. Okay. So that's the end of that report. And then the next one I wanted to do is number 60, creepy guy who liked to go out and meet young girls in bars. And creepy guy is right here in number 60. On December 12th, 2022, Idaho State Police Detective C. Pohanka and Trooper Andrew Weinstein conducted an interview with X. The interview was in reference to the murder of Madison Mogen, Kaylee Goncalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin, which, as we know, occurred at 1122 King Road, Moscow, Idaho, on November 13th of 2022. The interview took place at a redacted location. I just thought this was interesting. Again, we're not doing them all. We're just doing the ones that stood out to me. And we're going to do another episode going more fully into these reports. So if you know of a report that you want us to take a look at, let me know down below. On December 12th, 2022, at approximately 1:38 p.m., Idaho State Police Detective C. Pohanka and Trooper Redacted conducted an interview with, we're going to call this guy Mr. Z. The interview was in reference to the crimes against the 4 girls we just mentioned. They had received a tip provided by a redacted person from a redacted person about information this person might have. He lived in Moscow during 2021 and knew a guy named, we'll call him Z, unknown last name. He reported Z was creepy and liked to go out and try to meet young girls at bars. Z lived at a trailer park. He couldn't give an address, but stated it was at redacted coming into town. You would take a left and it would take you to the trailer park. He lives at the Z's trailer. Z had a lot of knives and drove in, and so now it's redacted, the make, model, year of his car, but this person wasn't certain, so it was either this or that. At approximately 1:44 p.m., we concluded the interview. So what does this mean? I mean, I don't know. Are there a lot of creepy guys in every town? I don't know. Are there a lot of young guys that like to meet young girls at bars? Yeah, the guy had a lot of knives. Whether it has anything to do with this case, we don't know. It is, and there's no indication. It would be nice if there was an indication somewhere that there was a follow-up. Now, again, I have not read all the documents. I have read a lot of the documents, but I haven't necessarily read them all. Number 62. This is kind of interesting. It goes into depth about the quote-unquote party house. On November 19th, 2022, at approximately 1:19 hours, Idaho State Police Detective Brady Walker, called Mr. A, we'll call him, date of birth 2002, at a redacted location from my ISP-issued cell phone while at the Moscow Police Department. ISP Detective Andy Hodel, I think would be how you pronounce that, and Mr. Detective, accept my apologies if I'm not announcing your name correctly. So we go into this, talk to a bunch of witnesses here. On November 19th, 2022, not long after what happened, at approximately 1 11:19 hours, I should say, ISP Detective Brady Walker, called A, date of birth 2002, at redacted from my ISP issued cell phone while at the Moscow Police Department. ISP Detective Andy Hodel was present. Again, apologies if I'm not pronouncing the last name correctly. The intent was to set up a time for an interview, but I learned that A was out of town. Detective Hodel started an audio recording shortly after redacted informed us she was out of the area, and I began the interview. This redacted person started at the University of Idaho the year before and met Madison Mogen and Xana Kernodle through her sorority. She grew close with Kernodle. She met Kaylee Goncalves around the middle of August 2022. She met redacted and redacted through her redacted the year before, probably the sorority, and their relationship grew closer after the start of the school year in August of 2022. Redacted visited 1122 King Road at least once every weekend and described it as a party house. Here we go. She would usually arrive at the house before other guests. The parties consisted of playing games and drinking. X described the parties as people mingling with each other and playing beer pong and being more relaxed than rowdy or rambunctious. There were only a few occasions where X would go there to simply watch a movie or do something other than party. The parties occurred about once a week on Friday or Saturday and were normally attended by 20 to 30 people. The parties were normally attended by the same 20 or 30 people. If a person showed up randomly to the party without being invited, they would not be invited to stay. X had not been there when that had happened. She knew of a house close by where Kernodle had lived the year before, where athletes would show up at a party if they heard about it. However, they were not welcome and were asked to leave. X later texted me a picture of a map of the neighborhood and circled the residence where Kernodle lived previously. That address for the house, she pointed out, was redacted. This person said redacted was dating a male named X who lived in Boise and thought that they had dated for a couple of years. She had not met Mr. X and did not believe he had visited Moscow. This person apparently would usually visit during school breaks. The only complaint this person had about X was how much he played video games. This person did not believe redacted had a relationship with another male during this time. 6, this person did not have a boyfriend at the time. She somewhat dated a male named redacted, and they something at least once, but the relationship did not really develop. Okay. All right, no comment. Number 7, Ethan Chapin stayed with Kernodle almost every night. X did not see Chapin and Kernodle on Saturday night, November 12th, but had seen them on Friday, November 11th, and described their relationship as good. She described Chapin as helpful to the other girls and said he seemed to fit in the house without any issues. So there's a reason I'm reading all this. This person, this witness, had met Mogen's boyfriend a couple of times and had last seen him at homecoming at the beginning of October. She didn't know Mogen that well, and they did not have deep personal discussions. 9, this person had not yet met Goncalves' boyfriend. When redacted was at the house, Goncalves was usually gone or upstairs in her room. On the night of November 12th, redacted was at another party with some other friends. Later sent me a picture of the location of the other house party, which was redacted. This person listed the attendees of that party as redacted, redacted, female, redacted, redacted, male, redacted, redacted, and eventually redacted. We're not learning a lot from this one quite yet, are we? But stay tuned, stay tuned. There were potentially other attendees, but she did not know everyone, so she could not remember. All attendees were students. At this time, our witness thought Chapin and Kernodle were still at the other party, I guess. 11. When our witness left redacted, she and redacted got a ride home from a sober freshman in a fraternity to 1122 King Road. She could not remember the make of his car. Okay. 12. Our witness here could not remember exact times that she left the party and went to 1122 King Road. She had taken videos and photographs that night and said the timestamp from the last video, a redacted, was at 11:54 p.m. The timestamp from the first video at 1122 King Road was 12:43 a.m. 13. When Redacted arrived with Redacted at 1122 King Road, she went straight to the bathroom on the main floor. They entered through the front door with the keypad lock. Several other people have the front door code, and we've heard this before. Here it is in this police report. And the sliding door on the main level had not been locked when she was there. She believed X got home right after she and X, but knew that they all arrived around the same time. She was not aware of anybody else being home and stayed on the main floor the entire time she was there. 14. After X went to the bathroom, they went to the kitchen where Redacted person made popcorn. Redacted person sat on the floor and played with Murph, Goncalves' famous now dog, Murphy. She thought that Redacted had let Murph out. After the popcorn was made, they went to the living room and started watching Vampire Diaries. Now, this is something we've heard before, and here it is in a police report. They didn't have much conversation while watching the movie. X took several selfies and videos. After leaving, X walked back to her sorority house. So she leaves. The timestamp on the last photograph she took at 1122 King Road was 1:33 a.m. So according to the police timeline, this is 1:32:33. This is about 2.5 hours before what was going to happen later that late night, early morning. The first timestamp from the media at her sorority house was 2:19. Okay. So she estimated it took about 15 minutes for her to walk home. Might have taken a little bit more. Or there was some time from the last photograph she took until the time she actually left. 15. While this person was at 1122 King Road, she was only aware of Redacted and Redacted being present and did not see or know of anyone else being at the house. She left through the front door and did not see anything of note while walking home. After leaving 1122 King Road, she did not hear from Redacted or Redacted until after receiving the vandal alert, of course, notifying the campus of this crime. 17. Redacted sent me several screenshots of social media contacts and contact cards for some of the people she mentioned. She also sent pictures and videos she took that night at, I guess, must be her other party, and then at 1122 King Road, as well as the previous mentioned map screenshots. The audio recording of the interview, as well as the photographs sent, were saved with this report. Supplement 62, and will be submitted at the Moscow Police Department. So those are a couple of the interesting early reports. Again, there are over 500 pages of these Idaho State Police reports. In our next episode, I am going to take a closer look at the fact that there was a dog berserk barking outside. How did Murphy get back inside the premises? That's a good question. If he was outside barking and barking and barking during anything that happened that night, how did he get back into that property? So a lot of these reports leave more questions than they answer. And so to some extent, it's very unsatisfying to have these. And this is, again, our midweek episode, which is pretty brief. We'll go more deeply into these in our next episode to drop over the weekend. Some of the other reports that I do want to share with you is stuff that was found inside that premises the day that Chief Fry drove there in a U-Haul. A tip from a person with a long history of weapon possession charges who was driving a white sedan. Was that one ever checked out? BK, Mr. Kohberger at a pool party. We have one report that is an in-depth interview with Jack DeCour. And we have some personalized thoughts of some of the people that dealt with Mr. Kohberger at the Washington State University. We have a guy that was injured by a table saw. He did, although he had an injury and was initially suspected, he provided his DNA and his phone. And the final one is Maddie's ex-boyfriend was interviewed. So we have a lot to cover here, and we'll do it in the next episode. I think that it leaves a lot of questions. The Idaho State Police were very good to leave us this information. And the question is, what do we learn? What are the questions? And speaking about information that has been put out, 2 of the families of the Idaho 4 are actually suing to keep more photographs from being released. What am I talking about? Here's an article from E-News confirming that Bryan Kohberger victims' families file lawsuit over crime scene photos. My first impression is, whatever happened to the First Amendment? Can we just sue people to not disclose information? Really? Well, let's look into it. The families of Madison Mogen and Ethan Chapin, 2 of the 4 college students murdered by Bryan Kohberger in 2022, are suing the city of Moscow, Idaho, over the release of crime scene photos. The families of Bryan Kohberger's victims are taking legal action 1 week after the Moscow Police Department released nearly 200 pictures from inside the off-campus home where this occurred. The families of Madison Mogen and Ethan Chapin, 2 of the 4 college students fatally stabbed by Mr. Kohberger, filed a lawsuit against the city of Moscow, Idaho. They had actually reached a point by the time of the sentencing that they actually had some closure and were able to sort things out somehow. The Mogens and Chapin's attorney, Leander James, told News Nation on August 18th, then they get hit with this, all of this ugly stuff getting released. While James acknowledged that there will be some information that the families probably can't stop from being public, he said his clients are suing to stop the release of more death scene photos.
Stop!
This, the attorney said, is just plain wrong. He argued, I appreciate the transparency and the right of the public to know, but there is a line there somewhere, and I think we're over that line. So the question is freedom of the press, although this is not really the press. This is the Moscow Police Department releasing these crime scene photos, as grisly as they are. So the stereotypical trial analysis wouldn't really apply here. I would like to see the actual suit papers and see what analysis that they allowed, because in constitutional law, under the First Amendment, prior restraints are very much disfavored. In other words, restraining the press, again, a press analysis, restraining the press from releasing information in advance is very much found almost always to be unconstitutional and against the First Amendment. But again, it's not a press analysis so much as going actually to the source, which is the Moscow Police Department. In the context of a trial where there are all these gruesome photographs in case after case after case, crime cases, there are always numerous photographs, not only of crime scenes, but of medical examiners' photographs, autopsy photographs, and all that kind of thing. So the test going into the trial is not only are these too numerous, but also is it too prejudicial? Does the prejudicial nature outweigh the relevance of the photographs? That's the test of relevance. But this isn't that. This is not that. This is whether or not the Moscow Police Department should be allowed to release these photos. Being a former reporter, I always come down on the side of everything should be released. But do the families have a point? So this attorney is saying, for now, the city of Moscow has stopped the release of any photos and videos taken from inside the victims' bedrooms after an Idaho judge granted an emergency restraining order filed by Mogen's mom, Karen Laramie, on August 12th, according to officials. In response to the outcry from the victims' families, city officials said the crime scene photos, which ranged from signs of typical college student life to images of blood-splattered walls, were released in compliance with a legal public records request. So there's that. And so some of them are being allowed to be released. And apparently the court initially is siding in part with the parents. So that'll be an interesting thing to keep an eye on. And I promise you that we will keep our eye on that. And we'll see what our viewers say. And speaking of our viewers, here are our viewer comments this week. And we have 10 of them. 5 of them are on the Kohberger case. And 5 of them are on the, I guess, the Turtle Boy case, coming down from the Karen Reed case. Comment number 1 comes from Green Mountain Boy. They know the case is a loser, but they just want to bleed Aiden's resources dry. The process is the punishment. And this goes to the case of Aiden Carney, Turtle Boy, who was arrested, I believe, way back in October of 2023 and accused with witness intimidation in association with the Karen Reed case. It's still going on. In our last episode, we covered a hearing that has just been held very recently, a hearing in which nothing really happened. There's another hearing coming up in a couple of weeks. And the issues are, why isn't the Commonwealth of Massachusetts producing all of the evidence that should be released under Rule 14 and under the obligation to release exculpatory information? Big question that hasn't been answered. Number 4 comes from George Jr., 2640. Is there any good reason to keep a grand jury? The system seems so full of fraud. And we talked about this before. A grand jury is a secret proceeding in which prosecutors go forward with their evidence and they present evidence to the grand jury, and the defense is not even there. Aiden Carney's attorneys, nor he, Karen Reed, nor her attorneys were allowed to go to her 2 grand juries, actually. And so it's secret. And so therefore the old saying that you could indict a ham sandwich because the ham sandwich isn't allowed representation. And the question, which I think has been answered in the Aiden Carney case, is they phonied up evidence. They took some of his episodes and they changed the titles to indicate that he, intended to do harm to people. And that's phony. They changed the titles. And so phony evidence was used to the grand jury, hence this comment by George Jr. Is there any good reason to keep a grand jury? The system seems so full of fraud. Well, if people are presenting unethical information, that's true. Number 3, Judge Jane's Addictions. Judge Jane's Addictions. I love these names. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts couldn't get Karen Reed, so they want to nail Aiden Carney. It's disgraceful and criminal. Number 2, John Barthart. Hank was not on top of stuff. Well, all right. I had made a comment that compared to the special prosecutor in the Aiden Carney case, attorney Robert Cosgrove, a retired judge in Massachusetts, I felt that Hank at least was cognizant of what was going on. He never said, I haven't been to the office for 2 days. It's true that early on in the case, he had just been hired and he stood in open court and he said, I haven't reviewed the trial transcript, but I don't know. That was my opinion, that I felt that that Mr. Brennan at least was more on top of things than Cosgrove is, but people didn't agree with me, including John Barthart. 1. So grand juries can indict based only on one side of the story and they still cheat. Yeah, it's true. It's crazy. I mean, if you're playing cards with someone else, you hope they don't cheat, but you're there to watch them, or maybe you have a friend there watching you. If you're playing solitaire and you cheat, it's pretty pathetic, isn't it? So now we're up to 78 countries. Albania chimed in, and we've had some other countries chime in. We started The World is Watching during the Karen Reed trial, and we had something like 75 countries watching us through the Karen Reed trial. Now we're up to 78. So screenshot this, take a look. If you're calling us or if you're viewing us from a country that is not on this list, let us know and we'll add you. So now we switch back over to the Kohberger case, and Jude 196 looked at that purported video purporting allegedly to show Mr. Kohberger inside of a facility somewhere. Thanks, Andrew and Yolie. Love your channel, Andrew. Wondering if this is AI. So many things that prisoners cannot have. Clothes look wrong. Shoes look wrong. Trash cans look wrong. So many things that are off. Yes, I agree. But we don't know. It's being investigated. Comment number 4 from Sergeant Rock, X6T. I liked this comment. Thank you, Sergeant Rock. Even with a guilty plea on record, releasing surveillance footage of Bryan Kohberger inside his jail cell would remain a serious violation of law and policy. Jail camera recordings are classified as confidential security material under Idaho regulations and cannot be released for public viewing. These protections don't disappear simply because an inmate has entered a plea. Unauthorized disclosure could still expose staff or officials to civil liability, disciplinary action, and even criminal penalties. The bottom line is this: jail surveillance footage is not public entertainment. It is protected evidence, and leaking it is against the law. And I have to agree with this. Sergeant Rock seems to be somebody that has some experience, seems to know what he's talking about, because I believe all of this is true. There are Eighth Amendment protections against certain treatment of prisoners, even if Mr. Kohberger pleaded guilty and is the guy that did all of this, as heinous as that is. Cruel and unusual punishment and patient rights are really important. And so it would seem to me, I don't know, it's one of two possibilities. It is either AI, and we're in a dangerous era where, some unbridled uses of AI are extremely dangerous. It's either that or it is a security camera footage of Mr. Kohberger, and somebody took a picture of it on their phone. And you can tell that it's a picture of a picture or a video of a video, because you see those hash lines over it. And that's a telltale sign that if it's legitimate, that's what happened. Comment number 3 on the Idaho 4 case. Ann M. says, keep covering this case as new docs or videos emerge. I am torn between he must have done it since he pleaded guilty and something is fishy here. We had asked in our last episode, I have gotten comments, move on. Mr. Myers, move on. Stop, covering this case. So I asked our commenters down below to let us know whether we should move on or whether we should continue to focus on this case. And by far, the vast majority, and no, I don't have the precise numbers, but I've got to say over 95 to 98% of you, our humble viewers, said, stay on this case. Stay on this case. There's something just fishy about the whole thing. So, number 2 from Sakura Smiles. Thank you for smiling. We appreciate it. Other inmates are supposedly talking to him through the ventilation system, yet everyone marvels at him looking up to listen intently in an attempt to understand what is being said to him. The vents are likely high on the walls or in the ceiling. How dare Bryan stand there looking up and trying to understand the sounds coming through the vents? Go figure. Okay, I had said I thought he was maybe... Some people said they thought he was maybe looking up at a TV. Others said, yeah, that's what he was doing. He was looking up, listening to the vents. So we don't know. When you comment, let us know your opinion, but don't tell us we're idiots if we don't agree with you. All right. Number 1, this is a great comment from Susan P8Z6G. Still no release of a single one of Bethany Funk's statements. It's all only what Dylan has said over and over and over. Now, why is that, I wonder? Well, defense investigator Richard Batante had issued an affidavit saying that Bethany had exculpatory information. And we know that a preliminary hearing in this case was canceled because the state went around and did a grand jury indictment. So we don't know. I'm not totally done. I've read most of the Idaho State Police reports. Not totally done, but I've read most of them, and I don't see anything. If you've seen something that I've missed, let me know. And we always point out at the end of these episodes that this is the case of the Idaho 4, Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogen, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle. And we do, in fact, always keep them in our minds. And we do, despite anything that you might think that we have said, we do, have a lot of feelings for them and their families. And no, I don't think there's any such thing as closure. It's a tough thing. So please, as I always say, be nice, be kind. You go down in the comments section. If you don't agree with somebody, don't call them a name. Tell us why you disagree. Start your own string. Don't say, oh, you're an idiot because you think that, or what are you on? Might be a nice, honest person you just don't agree with. Maybe they read something you didn't. Maybe you read something they didn't. Don't call people names. We generally, as soon as I see names, I stop reading, I delete it. Sure, yes, I delete those. So if you see something in a comment that you disagree with, start your own comment and say, here's what I think. Be positive. Here's what I think. I always say be nice. I've started to get stories, which I'm running out of time in this episode, but I'm going to start reading stories of people that are just, they commit random acts of kindness. So if you have a random act of kindness story, let us know. Make sure it fits on one of our slides. Please don't go on forever and ever and ever. I can't read those. In any event, this week's emoji, if you have listened to this entire episode, a police car, because we just read several of many police comments from the Idaho State Police. So we'll read more. If you want us to read any particular ones, or if there's a particular issue you want us to look for, let me know down below and I'll take a look at those. But do it right away, because we're going to be doing that. We're going to be producing that episode right away, right? Within, I'd say 48 hours of this episode, we will be producing that episode. So thank you very much. Please go down below. We don't huckster products. We don't try and sell you, coffee mugs, aprons, what else? Just any of that stuff. We're not looking for you to contribute money. All we want you to do is go down below and subscribe, like, and share. And if you have watched to this point, thank you very much for watching. Remember to be kind. Whether you are in the grocery store, the gas station, or anywhere else, please remember to be kind to people. You don't know what they're going through. And the same goes for our comments section. We want you to comment, but be nice, be kind, be positive if you can. And thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Have a good one.